Joining me now to talk about this is Florida Senator Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants. Senator, thanks for joining me. First, I want to ask about President-elect Donald Trump. He has called President Obama's move to normalize relations with Cuba a weak agreement. But in the past, he also expressed interest in opening a hotel in Cuba, saying it's okay to bring Cuba back into the fold. What will you be demanding of the Trump administration vis-a-vis Cuba?
Well, first of all, the thing you outlined about Donald Trump happened a long time ago. He has since then said that they never went forward with it, and he has since changed his position. And we're always, like I said, for many people, Cuba is an issue they're not dealing with every single day unless you live down here in Miami. And so we're always looking to change people's minds on it. And since that time, as a candidate for president, he made very clear that he felt that the moves that President Obama had made towards Cuba were wrong, and that he would examine them and change the ones that needed to be changed. And I think that's very promising. So what I argue is, number one, our goal is the national security and national interest of the United States, and as part of that, to do everything possible through our foreign policy towards Cuba to incentivize and pave the way for the move towards democracy. And we should examine our policy towards Cuba through those lenses. And if there's a policy that helps that, it remains in place. And if it's a policy that doesn't, it's removed. And that's what I would encourage them to do, and I look forward to working with them on that.
So, Senator, just to be clear, do you feel confident that President-elect Trump, when in office, will roll back the openings that President Obama put in place?
Well, I'll take him at his word for it. That's what he said he was going to do. And number two, I'm a lot more confident in him doing that than I would have been in Hillary Clinton doing it, which I'm sure she would not have. So again, we intend to play an active role in making suggestions and providing guidance about what we specifically think needs to happen. But so far, he has said all the right things. I know they've had good people advising them on this issue as well. So I certainly have confidence that he's going to do the right thing when it comes to Cuba.
Senator, you called President Obama pathetic for offering condolences to Fidel Castro's family. But, you know, he wasn't the only world leader to do so. And even Pope Francis sent a telegram expressing sentiments of sorrow. As a practicing Catholic, what's your reaction to that?
Well, as a practicing Catholic, I believe in the theological authority of the Bishop of Rome, and that's what Pope Francis is. On political matters, however, particularly on foreign policy issues, I don't necessarily believe that binds those of us in the faith in terms of issues of foreign policy. I still respect it, but that's a very different thing. Pope Francis is the leader of a religious organization, the Roman Catholic Church. Barack Obama is the president of the most powerful country in the world. And what I call pathetic is not mentioning whatsoever in that statement the reality that there are thousands upon thousands of people who suffered brutally under the Castro regime. He executed people. He jailed people for 20 to 30 years. The Florida Straits, there are thousands of people who lost their lives fleeing his dictatorship. And not to acknowledge any of that in the statement, I felt is pathetic, absolutely.
Senator, I want to talk about the election that just happened. You endorsed Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, but it wasn't that long ago you were running against Mr. Trump for the GOP nomination, and you called him unfit for the presidency. Take a listen.
We're about to turn over the conservative movement to a person that has no ideas of any substance on the important issues, the nuclear codes of the United States, to an erratic individual.
Senator, do you still have those concerns about President-elect Trump?
Well, Dana, the bottom line, we had an election, and ultimately the voters chose him, both as our nominee and now as our president. So the election is over, and now it comes time to govern, and we're going to give him every chance to be successful. And that's what I'm focused on now. At some point, elections end, and the governing needs to begin. So we'll have another election for Congress in 2 years, and another election for president in 4. But right now, my hope is that this president is given the opportunity, this president-elect is given the opportunity to be successful. And that's been a long tradition in this country. When the election ends, you don't root against the president-elect because you understand that while you'll have significant policy disagreements with them, whether they're in your party or not, if they don't succeed, the country gets hurt. So I'm going to give him every opportunity to be successful. He has earned this position. He was elected to this position, and he deserves the opportunity to be successful.
Senator, I completely get that elections are over and now it is time for governing. But given the fact that it is time for governing, and your criticism was about his abilities to govern, you know, even as far as saying that he shouldn't have the nuclear codes because he's too erratic, what will you do as senator, as somebody who actually has the responsibility of check and balance to make sure that he is governing properly, given the concerns that you expressed?
The same as I would do with anybody else who's elected. I mean, we have a role in the Senate, for example, in cabinet appointments and nominations that will review each of those. and we'll play our proper role under the Constitution. We'll do the same with public policy. If I would agree with him on a public policy, I'll work with them on it. If I disagree with him, I'll oppose it. And that's the job of the Senate, not to be a rubber stamp. But that doesn't mean we open this broadcast here today by attacking the person or our differences. There's no doubt that during the campaign, I wanted to be the president of the United States. The voters chose differently, both in the Republican primary and ultimately in the general election. So the campaign ends, and now should be given the opportunity to be successful. And again, if I agree with him on something, I'm going to be a supporter and work hard to achieve it. And if I disagree with him on a policy matter, then I'll come on this show and others, and I'll talk about why I believe that's the wrong way forward and offer an alternative.
So do you feel comfortable now with Donald Trump in charge of the nuclear arsenal?
I feel comfortable that the voters have chosen him to be the commander-in-chief, and we're going to give him every chance to be a successful one. And ultimately, it'll be incumbent upon him, as it would be upon any president who is elected, but to prove their capability in that role. And he deserves that opportunity. He has earned it at the ballot box.
Senator, let's talk about the way that he's going to put his administration together. He's still mulling his choice for Secretary of State. Given how critical you were about his abilities on the world stage, who would you like to see in that role?
Well, I'm not going to do that because that's his prerogative to choose the person that he can work with. And he was elected president, not me. And so he has the opportunity to pick someone that he believes will carry out his vision of American foreign policy. When that nomination is made, we will play our role in the Senate of examining that individual, understanding both their background and qualifications, and then making a determination upon whether or not we're going to support that nomination. But it is not my role, nor would it be appropriate for me to sit here and go out and throw out names. That's a role that he has earned. And he deserves the opportunity to pick someone that he could work with, not just someone who's qualified, but someone that he can work with and feels comfortable working with.
Let me throw out a name then, somebody who has been publicly lobbying for the job, Rudy Giuliani. You're a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. It would be your job to vote. Would you vote? Would you vote to confirm Rudy Giuliani as Secretary of State?
I like Rudy Giuliani a lot. I know him well. Consider him to be a friend and a supporter of mine. And obviously, Rudy will have to go through that process. I'll have specific questions. He'll be treated fairly. And it's important for me to know where he stands on a couple of key issues if he is, in fact, the person who is nominated. But I like him personally. I think he's certainly intelligent and capable and knowledgeable. He'll have to go through that process, and we'll make a determination once we've had a chance to sit with him, ask him specific questions, and understand a little bit better about his view moving forward.
Senator Marco Rubio, thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.